Hello, these are the notes on Reconstruction Policies from 1865 to 1877. Please make sure that you have your worksheet ready. You'll notice that the words that you need to fill in the blanks are in bold and underlined. Feel free to pause the video as you need to, and you can definitely go back and re-listen to parts that you may need to make sure that you get all the information. Reconstruction was the social, physical, political, and economic rebuilding of the country after the Civil War. It was an attempt by the North to define the means by which all Southerners could live together equally. That's black and white Southerners. As we'll see, in many ways Reconstruction was like a big game of tug of war between the North and the South. The North would do something, the South would do something. North and then South, back and forth. Reconstruction started as Presidential Reconstruction. It was run by President Andrew Johnson, based somewhat off of Abraham Lincoln's plan to reconcile the North and the South. Remember, Lincoln was president when Lee's army had surrendered during the Civil War, but Lincoln was shot and killed, and Johnson took over. Now, Johnson was from the South, and many Northerners are going to feel that he's going to be too lenient or easygoing towards the South. Some good things happened during Presidential Reconstruction. The 13th Amendment was passed in 1865 after the Civil War. This amendment abolished or banned slavery in the United States and any of its territories. The Freedmen's Bureau was established. Congress made this organization that helped African Americans adjust to freedom. It provided food, clothing, and medical services. It also helped them acquire land and find work for fair wages. It helped to educate the former slaves and reunite families separated because of slavery. We'll see some pictures of the Freedmen's Bureau at work on the next two slides. There was a group called carpetbaggers that went to the South. These are Northerners who went to the South immediately following the Civil War for political and/or financial advantages. They carried their belongings in cheap bags made of carpet fabric. People in the South really didn't like carpetbaggers because they felt like they were being taken advantage of. The South responded to all this by passing what were called black codes. These were local laws adopted by Southern state governments in reaction to the 13th Amendment. They were created to control freed men and women during early Reconstruction. They took away the new rights of freed slaves and often resembled slavery. An example, freed slaves couldn't own or rent farms in the South. Many Northern Republicans were upset by Andrew Johnson's plan. They felt that he was too lenient on the South, and they felt that he didn't do enough against the black codes. They were concerned that the same people that controlled the South before the Civil War would remain in power, and the rights of African Americans were not being protected, especially because of the black codes. Because of all this, we have a new phase in Reconstruction, and it's called Congressional Reconstruction. This is going to be led by Congress, and they're going to start to make some changes. The first thing they're going to do, or one of the main things they're going to do, is they're going to make it so that Southern military leaders could not hold public office. So, for example, people like Jefferson Davis and Robert E. Lee, who served for the South during the Civil War, could not be in public office. However, African Americans could hold public office. We have at the bottom of the slide here a picture of the first African Americans to serve in the U.S. Congress. The South was divided up into different military districts. under the supervision of federal or Northern troops. You can see from the map that most of the former Confederacy, except for Tennessee, was put under military control. This political cartoon is showing how federal troops are trying to come in and keep the peace between white Southerners and black Southerners. Civil Rights Act of 1866. To counter the Black Codes, the Civil Rights Act of 1866 was created. This is going to grant citizenship and equal rights to all persons born in the United States, except for Native Americans. Native Americans will be granted citizenship in 1924. 2 years later, the 14th Amendment is going to be ratified. That'll be in 1868. It's going to grant citizenship to persons born in the United States, and it's going to guarantee equal protection under the law. The passage of this amendment was to ensure all African Americans were being treated equally, despite the Black Codes. Congressional Reconstruction is going to go a step further with the 15th Amendment. In 1870, the 15th Amendment was ratified. It's going to ensure that all citizens have the right to vote, regardless of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. People in Congress wanted to make sure that African Americans had their rights protected. And one of the main ways that they could make sure of that is to make sure that African Americans could vote. However, during this time, the South is still going to be trying to find ways to oppose what the North is doing and trying to prevent African Americans from enjoying all of their rights. Eventually, the Northern commitment to Reconstruction is going to start to waver. It's going to falter and start to fail. The Southerners, as mentioned, felt that Reconstruction policies were harsh, and they're going to continue to oppose the efforts. Many Northerners are going to start to feel that it's going to be becoming more important to fix the declining economy. In the middle of the 1870s, the Northern economy is going to start to run into trouble. So they're going to want to work on that instead of working to reconstruct the South. And also, new Republican leaders, the Republicans were the leaders in Congress, are going to begin to think that the South should solve its own problems, and that the North shouldn't be the one to figure all this out. Well, all this is going to come to a climax in the election of 1876. Rutherford B. Hayes, the Republican, is running against Samuel Tilden, the Democrat. The result of the election was disputed. Depending on who you talked to, depending on which electoral votes you counted, you couldn't tell if the Republican or the Democratic candidate won. So there's a compromise. This is known as the Compromise of 1877. In it, Republicans agreed to end Reconstruction in exchange for winning the presidency. Federal troops are removed from the South. The South was mainly favoring the Democratic Party. Jim Crow laws, which we'll explain in a moment, are going to become more prevalent, and these are going to cause African Americans to lose rights gained in the South during Reconstruction. Jim Crow laws are going to enforce segregation and discrimination, such as poll taxes, literacy tests, grandfather clauses, and they're going to bring about the concept of separate but equal. Some examples include segregated bathrooms, buses, and schools. They'll be established at the end of in later Reconstruction, and they're going to last throughout the 1960s to take away any rights African Americans had earned through the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. The name Jim Crow comes from a cartoon character in the 1830s that pretended to be a black man making fun of freed slaves. You'll see some images of segregation on the next two slides. There was a court case called Plessy versus Ferguson that tried to fight against segregation, against the Jim Crow laws. Homer Plessy, who is 1/8 African American, was arrested for boarding a white-only train car. Plessy did this in protest of segregated train cars. His case made it all the way to the Supreme Court. In 1896, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of segregation as long as it was equal. This is going to establish the significant ruling of separate but equal, making Jim Crow laws constitutional legal until 1954. This is going to allow the South to enforce segregation until the Civil Rights era. Thank you for listening to the notes. Don't forget to go back and re-listen to any parts that you may need to.